Picture this. A baby is lying on a blanket in the middle of the living room floor doing what babies do, which is mostly waving their arms around and making noises. And a few feet away sits a dog, an animal descended from wolves. An apex predator with a bite force that could snap bone with teeth, designed for tearing flesh, watching the single most helpless, most defenseless creature in the entire house. And what does the dog do? It sighs, walks over, and lies down beside the baby. It positions itself between the baby and the door. When a stranger comes near, it moves closer. When the baby cries, it gets up and goes to find you, whining insistent as if to say something is wrong, come deal with this. Almost every dog owner who has had a baby describes some version of this. The dog that suddenly appoints itself the night guard outside the nursery door. The dog that won't settle until the crying stops. The dog that lets a toddler climb on it, pull its ears, poke its face, and just endures it with a patience it would never show another adult dog. Something changes when a baby enters the house, and it changes in the animal, not just in us. That is one of the strangest, most beautiful things in the entire animal kingdom, and almost nobody stops to ask why it happens. Why would a predator be gentle with the young of a completely different species? Why does a creature that could end that baby in 1 second instead appoint itself as its personal bodyguard? What is actually going on inside that dog's head, and is any of it what we think it is? The answer is a stack of overlapping reasons that go back tens of thousands of years, and it involves hijacked brain chemistry, a strange visual trick that babies play on the mammal brain, and a shared history so deep it rewrote the biology of two entirely separate species. And by the end of this, you'll never look at your dog and your baby the same way again. There's also one thing we absolutely have to be honest about, and I'll get to that because it matters more than any of the sweet stuff. Let's dig into it. Let's start with the most obvious question, because it's the one that undermines the whole premise. Is this even real? Or is it just people projecting human feelings onto their pets, seeing a dog lying near a baby, and inventing a heroic story about a noble guardian, when really the dog just found a warm spot on the floor? That's a fair challenge, and honestly, for a long time, the scientific answer was basically, yes, you're projecting. Stop being sentimental about it. So researchers actually went and tested it, and the results are genuinely striking. Scientists ran an experiment where they played 3 different sounds to dogs and to humans and measured what happened inside their bodies. The 3 sounds were a human baby crying, a human baby babbling happily, and plain white noise as a control. Then they measured cortisol, the stress hormone, in both the dogs and the people. And here's what they found. In both humans and dogs, cortisol levels shot up significantly, but only after hearing the crying. Not the babbling, not the noise. Specifically, the crying. The dogs' bodies were physiologically reacting to a human infant's distress in the same direction and in the same way that a human body reacts. That's not a story someone made up about their pet. That's a hormone measured in blood. But it gets more interesting because the researchers also watched what the dogs did. And the dogs showed a very specific and unusual behavioral combination in response to the crying submissiveness mixed with alertness. That combination is worth sitting with. Submissiveness, the lowered posture, the soft approach, the gentle body language dogs use to signal, I am not a threat. I come in peace. And alertness, the raised attention, the scanning, the readiness. Put those 2 things together and you get an animal that is simultaneously saying, I am no danger to you and something is wrong here and I am paying attention. That is almost exactly what a caring adult does when a baby cries. Soften your voice, approach gently, and at the same time, snap to attention and start looking for the problem. The dog was doing a version of the same thing. Researchers describe this as evidence of emotional contagion, a primitive form of empathy running across the species barrier from a human infant into a dog. So no, you're not imagining it. Something real is happening. But that only makes the question louder. Why? Why does a baby's cry reach into a dog's body and turn a knob that isn't supposed to be reachable by another species at all? To answer that, we have to talk about the single most important relationship in the history of animal domestication, and a chemical that has been quietly running the show this whole time. The chemical is oxytocin. You've probably heard it called the love hormone or the cuddle hormone, and scientists get a bit tired of those nicknames because it does far more than that, but the nickname captures something true. Oxytocin is deeply involved in bonding and caregiving. It surges in a mother's body during birth and nursing. It's a huge part of the chemistry that makes a parent look at their newborn, an object that screams constantly and provides nothing in return, and feel an overwhelming urge to protect it at any cost. Now, Here's where it gets remarkable. In 2015, researchers at Azabu University in Japan, led by Miho Nagasawa, published a study in the journal Science that changed how we think about dogs. They found that when a dog and its owner simply gaze into each other's eyes, oxytocin rises in both of them. At the same time, in a loop, the human looks at the dog, oxytocin rises, they want to look and touch more, which raises the dog's oxytocin, which makes the dog gaze more, and around it goes. A self-reinforcing chemical circuit of bonding. And the researchers pointed out something extraordinary about that loop. It's essentially the same feedback loop that binds a human mother to her human infant. The dog isn't using some special dog-specific bonding system. It has plugged directly into the ancient mammalian machinery that exists for parents and babies. Then came the detail that seals it. They ran the same experiment with wolves. Not wild wolves, but wolves that had been raised by humans, socialized, comfortable with their handlers, genuinely bonded to them. And the loop did not happen. The wolves didn't engage in that sustained mutual gaze, and the oxytocin surge didn't appear the way it did with dogs. Think about what that means. This bonding mechanism was not there in the ancestor. It appeared somewhere during the 15 to 40,000 years that wolves were becoming dogs alongside us. Over that immense span of time, the proto-dogs that could look at a human in a way that triggered the human parental bonding response got fed, got protected, got to survive and breed. The ones that couldn't, didn't. Generation after generation, we accidentally selected for animals that could reach into our parental circuitry and switch it on. And this wasn't a gentle, gradual thing that happened in the background. It was probably the single most consequential partnership in human history. Picture the earliest version of it, a group of wolves hanging around the edges of a human camp, scavenging scraps. The boldest, least fearful ones get more food. Over generations, they get bolder and tamer. And at some point, the relationship flips from tolerance into something else. Because it turns out, a wolf that sleeps near your camp and barks at approaching danger is genuinely useful. Your camp is safer. Your hunts are more successful. Your children are better protected. That last part matters enormously for our story. For most of human history, the greatest threat to a child was not disease or hunger, but predators and strangers arriving in the night. And an animal that raised the alarm, that put itself between the darkness and the sleeping family, was worth its weight in meat. So there was real brutal selection pressure on both sides. Humans favored dogs that guarded the group, especially the vulnerable young. And dogs that did so got fed, sheltered, and allowed to breed. The instinct you see when your dog positions itself between your baby and the front door is not a random quirk. It may be one of the oldest job descriptions on Earth. And here's the part that brings us back to the baby on the blanket. If dogs evolved to plug into the parent-infant bonding system, then a real human infant is not some alien object to a dog. It is the exact kind of thing that system was built around. The baby is, in a sense, standing at the very center of the machinery that dogs spent tens of thousands of years learning to operate. But there's a second force at work here, and it's a visual trick so powerful it works on almost every mammal that has ever cared for its young. Back in 1943, an ethologist named Konrad Lorenz described something he called the Kinder schema, which translates as baby schema. He noticed that human babies share a specific cluster of physical features: a large head relative to the body, a big rounded forehead, large eyes set low on the face, chubby cheeks, a small nose and mouth, and clumsy, uncoordinated movements. And he argued that this specific package of features acts as a trigger. When an adult sees it, it fires off caregiving instincts, the urge to protect, to nurture, to be gentle. And crucially, Lorenz argued that this trigger is not fussy about species. It doesn't run an identity check first. A puppy has it. A kitten has it. A baby seal has it. And a human infant absolutely has it. In fact, human babies are one of the most extreme examples of the baby schema in the animal kingdom because our infants are born far more helpless than almost any other creature and stay that way for years. Modern research using brain scanners has largely backed Lorenz up. Looking at something with baby-like features lights up reward and caregiving regions of the brain. It's not a vague, warm feeling, it's a measurable neurological event. Now apply that to a dog. Dogs are mammals, with their own strong parental care systems built to respond to helpless puppies. And a human baby, with its enormous round head, huge eyes, tiny nose, high-pitched sounds, and complete physical helplessness, is pushing every single one of those buttons at once. To a dog's ancient caregiving circuitry, a human infant reads unmistakably as a baby. Not necessarily as its baby, but as a baby, a thing that is small and helpless and radiating the universal signal of needs, care, do not harm. And here's a delicious irony hiding in this. Dogs have been on the receiving end of exactly this same trick, and it shaped their faces. Over thousands of years of living with us, humans consistently preferred dogs that looked more baby-like, rounder faces, bigger eyes, floppier ears, features that stayed puppyish into adulthood. Biologists call this neoteny, the retention of juvenile traits in an adult animal. Research has even found that dogs evolved a specific facial muscle that wolves largely lack, one that raises the inner eyebrow and produces that pleading, wide-eyed puppy dog expression that melts human hearts on contact. Dogs did not develop that muscle by accident. It exists because for thousands of years, the dogs that could make that face got more food, more affection, more care. So consider what's actually happening on that living room floor. A baby is triggering the ancient caregiving instinct in a dog. And that dog is a creature whose entire face was sculpted over millennia by the very same instinct running in humans. Two species, each shaped by the other's response to helplessness, sitting side by side. The baby schema didn't just make dogs gentle with your child. The baby schema is a big part of why dogs exist in your living room at all. So now we have two forces stacking a bonding system. Dogs evolved specifically to share with humans, and a baby detection system that is deeply ancient and doesn't care much about species lines. And then there's a third factor, which is much more practical, and it's about the family itself. Dogs are pack animals, descended from one of the most intensely social predators on the planet. Wolves live in family groups, and a wolf pack is not just a random collection of individuals. It's an extended family in which raising the young is a group project. Adult wolves that are not the parents will still guard the pups, play with them, bring them food, and tolerate an astonishing amount of nonsense from them. This is a well-documented pattern in social animals, sometimes called alloparenting, where individuals help raise offspring that aren't biologically their own. In a wolf pack, protecting the next generation is everyone's job because the pups are the future of the family. Now drop a domestic dog into a human household. From the dog's perspective, this is its pack. These are its people. And when a new, tiny, helpless member arrives, that ancient social software has a category for it. This is one of ours, and the young of the pack get protected. The dog doesn't need to consciously reason this out. It's running an inherited program that says, the vulnerable members of my group are to be guarded, and the human baby has just been slotted into that program. And if you think this cross-species protectiveness is something unique to dogs, the animal kingdom will surprise you. There are documented cases of animals extending care to the young of entirely different species, sometimes species they would normally eat. Cats have raised orphaned rabbits and squirrels. Dogs have nursed orphaned kittens, piglets, even ducklings. There are recorded instances of a lioness in Kenya that repeatedly adopted and protected antelope calves, an animal that was, biologically speaking, lunch. Chimpanzees have been observed carrying and caring for infants of other species. In captivity and in the wild, again and again, the baby detection system in a mammal brain misfires across the species line, and something small and helpless gets protected instead of eaten. What does that tell us? It tells us that this trigger, the response to helplessness, is so deeply wired and so ancient that evolution built it a little bit loose. A perfectly precise system would only respond to your own offspring. But the caregiving instinct in many mammals is slightly leaky. It spills over. And that leakiness, biologically imperfect as it is the reason a dog will lie down next to a human baby, and the reason a person will cry at a video of a kitten. The same evolutionary sloppiness that makes a dog gentle with your infant is the thing that lets you love a dog like family. It runs in both directions. There's also a much simpler layer, and it would be dishonest to skip it. Dogs are extraordinary readers of us. They watch our faces constantly. They track our gaze. They read our tone of voice and our body language with a sensitivity that often exceeds what other humans manage. And when a baby arrives, the entire emotional climate of the house changes. The parent's behavior around this new creature is unmistakable. Gentle voices, careful movements, constant attention. High alert whenever it makes a sound. Dogs notice all of this. They can see in the clearest possible terms that this small squeaking thing is extremely important to their people. And a dog that has spent its life learning to align itself with its humans will pick up that signal loud and clear. The baby is precious. Act accordingly. And dogs are reading the baby through channels you can barely imagine. Start with smell. A dog's sense of smell is somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 times more sensitive than yours, and a newborn is a walking cloud of chemical information. The baby smells like the mother. It carries her scent from months in the womb, from constant contact from nursing, to a dog that has spent years learning every nuance of its people's individual scents. A newborn does not smell like a stranger. It smells like family, unmistakably, from the very first day. That may be one reason so many dogs seem to accept a new baby almost immediately. Chemically, the introduction has already been made. Then there's sound. Dogs hear far higher frequencies than we do, and a baby's cry is a piercing, high-pitched, urgent signal, specifically engineered by evolution to be impossible to ignore. Human infant cries fall in a range that mammal brains are tuned to find distressing, because a cry that could be tuned out would be a useless cry. And that same evolutionary design that makes a baby's wail cut straight through a sleeping parent's brain at 3 in the morning also cuts straight through a dog's. Remember the study we talked about? The dog's cortisol rose only for crying, not babbling, not noise. The specific acoustic signature of a distressed infant reached inside a completely different species and raised its stress hormones. That is how universal, how ancient, and how powerful the language of infant distress really is. Now let's get to the part I promised, and it's the most important thing in this entire video. Because everything I've described is real and beautiful and backed by science. But it is not the whole truth, and the missing part matters more than all the rest. Dogs are not unconditionally safe with babies. Not ever. Not even the gentlest one. Not even the one that has been perfect for 10 years. Not even yours. I know that's not the warm ending anyone wants from a video like this. But the honest version of this story includes the fact that dog bites to infants and young children are a real and serious problem, and they very often involve the family's own dog. A dog with no history of aggression in a home where everyone believed it could never happen. The most heartbreaking cases almost always share the same detail for a moment. An adult wasn't watching. And when you understand the science we just walked through, you can actually see why. All of those beautiful mechanisms, the oxytocin bond, the baby schema, the pack instinct, are exactly that mechanisms. They are tendencies, powerful and ancient and real, but they are not guarantees, and they can be overridden in an instant. A dog in pain from an ear infection or arthritis you didn't know about can snap when a toddler grabs it. A dog startled awake can react before it knows what it's reacting to. A dog that has been perfectly patient 100 times can reach its limit on the 101st because a baby crawled onto it while it was eating, or pulled its tail one time too many, or crowded it into a corner where it couldn't retreat. And here's a subtle one that surprises people. Babies and toddlers are genuinely confusing to dogs. They move unpredictably. They lurch and fall. They squeal at frequencies that can be distressing. They stare directly into a dog's eyes, which in dog language can read as a challenge. They hug, which is a restraint, not a comfort in the way dogs communicate. A toddler stumbling toward a dog with arms out and eyes locked on is, from the dog's point of view, doing several genuinely alarming things at once with no warning and no way to negotiate. And this is where something genuinely useful comes in, because dogs almost always tell us before anything goes wrong. We just don't know how to read them. Long before a dog ever snaps, it typically gives a series of quiet, polite signals that say, "I am uncomfortable, please give me space." Trainers sometimes call these calming signals or stress signals, and once you know them, you see them everywhere. A dog turning its head away from the child, licking its lips when there's no food around, yawning when it isn't tired, showing the whites of its eyes in a half-moon shape as it looks sideways, freezing, going stiff and still, trying to leave the room, tucking its tail, flattening its ears, or lowering its body. Every one of those is a request. The dog is asking in the only language it has for the situation to change. And here's the tragedy. Because those signals are so subtle, people usually miss them, or worse, punish the dog for growling, which is the last clear warning it has left. A dog that learns growling gets it into trouble, may stop growling. And a dog that has stopped warning is far more dangerous than one that hasn't. So the single most useful thing you can do beyond supervision is to learn to see those small signals and respond to them, move the child, give the dog an escape route, let it leave. You are not just protecting your baby, you are keeping faith with an animal that is trying very hard to be good. So the real answer, the responsible one, is this dogs are astonishingly movingly predisposed to gentleness with infants, and you should never rely on it. Both things are true at the same time. Every reputable expert on this subject says the same thing: active supervision always. Not in the same room, not glancing over occasionally, but genuinely watching with the ability to intervene. And if you're not able to actively watch, physically separate them, not because your dog is bad, but because you love both of them, and dogs cannot speak. That isn't a sad footnote to this story. It's actually the deepest expression of the whole thing. Because the entire relationship between our species is built on us taking responsibility for them, and them trusting us too. Supervision isn't distrust. It's the human half of the bargain. The dog brings its ancient gentleness, its patience, its instinct to guard. We bring the judgment, the awareness, and the ability to step in before anything goes wrong. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. Okay, with that said, and it needed to be said, let's come back to the wonder of it, because there's a final layer to this that might be the most remarkable of all. Everything we've talked about so far has been about what happens inside the dog. But the story doesn't run one way. Because that same oxytocin loop, the one that lets a dog reach into the human bonding system, runs in both directions. When you look at your dog, your own oxytocin rises. The chemistry that makes you love your child is to a real degree the same chemistry that makes you love your dog, which is why so many people describe their dog as family or as one of their kids, and mean it in a way that isn't quite metaphorical. Biologically, they're not entirely wrong. Brain imaging studies have even found that when mothers look at photos of their own child and photos of their own dog, some of the same reward and attachment regions light up in response to both. Think about what that means for the scene we started with. When a dog lies down next to a baby, you are not watching two unrelated beings sharing a floor. You are watching the meeting point of two ancient systems that got fused together over tens of thousands of years of shared life. The dog is running caregiving software older than our species, aimed at a creature that isn't its own kind. And the human watching feels a swell of warmth at the sight, because their own bonding chemistry is firing too at a creature that isn't their own kind either. We tend to talk about domestication as something we did to dogs. We took wolves and we shaped them. But the more researchers look at it, the more it seems the process ran both ways. Dogs shaped us too. They found their way into our families, our homes, our bonding hormones, and our sense of who counts as one of us. Somewhere along the way, humans became a species that folds another animal into the family circle and means it. And dogs became an animal that reads a human infant's cry and feels something rise in its blood. That's the thing that really gets me about this. A dog protecting a baby is not a cute quirk. It's the visible tip of one of the strangest and most successful partnerships in the history of life on Earth. Two predators from completely different branches of the mammal family tree who somehow ended up so tangled together that the chemistry meant for one species' babies now flows toward the others. So, why are dogs so gentle with babies? Because 150 centuries of living side by side rewired both of us. Because a baby's face and a baby's cry are keys that fit locks in almost every mammal brain, including the one behind those brown eyes on your living room floor. Because dogs are pack animals, and your baby got slotted into the pack. And because dogs watch us so closely that they can tell without a single word exactly how much this small creature means to us. And because in the end, dogs seem to have decided a long time ago that our people are their people, including the tiniest ones, especially the tiniest ones. There's something almost unbearably moving in that when you really sit with it. Every other large predator on Earth looks at a human infant and sees either nothing or prey. One species looked at it and saw someone to guard, not because we trained it to, not because it gets anything out of it, but because somewhere in the long, dark stretch of prehistory, our two species agreed without a single word to take care of each other's children. And that agreement is still running right now, in living rooms all over the world, in an animal who has no idea it's carrying 40,000 years of history on its shoulders, while it sighs and settles down beside a baby on a blanket. Just watch them. Always watch them. And then let yourself be amazed by what you're seeing, because it took the better part of 40,000 years to build, and it's happening on your living room floor.